you very much, Shreya. So let me, in fact, invite our managing editor, Robin Sharma, to come up on stage and present the bouquet and memento to Namal Rajapaksa. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we live in interesting times. There could have been happier times, but unfortunately there are a lot of conflicts that are taking place around the world that are shaping our world. And Namal, you spoke extensively on, the opportunities and also the challenges, where geography in many ways defines our destiny. And Sri Lanka is, of course, very geostrategically placed. But I want to start off by asking you, at this moment, what has captured the imagination of a lot of people is this war that has broken out in the Middle East that has been waging for the last 18 days that will have global ramifications if it has not already started to have one. But the incident that happened just 40 nautical miles off the coast of Sri Lanka, where the Americans torpedoed a Iranian warship, Iris Dina. You are one of those individuals who spoke out very prominently about it. Tell us, how did Sri Lanka feel about the fact that an incident of this magnitude actually happened so close to your coast?
Well, as you know, Sri Lanka was one of those countries who promoted, who was initiated non-aligned movement at that time, and also who was a very advocate of it. And also we strongly believe that the Indian Ocean must remain as a zone of peace and non-conflict. So it was disturbing to know that the war has reached our shores as well, starting from the Gulf to Indian Ocean. So I think this is where the Indian Ocean nations must work together. And I believe one way forward, out of many options that we have, is going to be the Colombo Security Conclave that was initiated in 2011. And the Secretariat must be established, and maritime domain awareness is something that is very important at this given stage as a region. And I think the impact is all over the place. I mean, it's not only to Sri Lanka, but one fact that we must keep in mind, that there's a precedent now. So the war, technology, military advancement is not only with the governments on today's context. And if you recall, we have gone through a war for 30 years, and LTT had submersibles at that time, and they had 2 torpedoes as well. And one was recovered, and one was tested apparently, and one was recovered. It's in the Trincomalee Naval Base. So you see different organizations with military technology. So a precedent in Indian Ocean, it's alarming, and it's something I personally believe that the region must take it very seriously, and to make sure things like that doesn't happen here in the future.
Now, the ramifications of what is happening, the global conflicts are immense. A lot of people say the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is shut, if it continues to remain shut, it can plunge the global economy into a recession. Sri Lanka is dependent for nearly 37% of all crude that it consumes, and it comes from the Strait of Hormuz. What is your plan? Do you have a contingency as to how you want to overcome the challenge that if 37% of your crude is cut off, that is going to be catastrophic?
Well, I mean, it's not a single challenge only to Sri Lanka, but for the region as well. And I'm sure the government at the moment...
No, I ask you this because you're from Sri Lanka, so what is your contingency plan? Yeah.
Well, our government is engaging with various stakeholders, various partners, and also with India as well, to make sure that our supply chains keep intact. And I think it is high time that they have a long-term strategy, and this is something that we would have thought 20 years ago about completing the fuel tanks what we have, and also looking for renewable energy sources to be expanded in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, as you know, in subcontinent, certain domestic politics keeps on changing, the policies keep on changing. But I think at the moment, it's about engaging and making sure that the nations that can influence for a peaceful settlement must engage aggressively to make sure that the conflict at least go on a hold for a period of time. And then countries like us must make sure that we engage with our friendly neighbors and friendly partners to make sure that the supply chain continues.
Right now, India 2022, that's not a year that people in Sri Lanka will forget. There was what was called the Sri Lankan Revolution or the struggle of the Sri Lankan people to overcome the economic hardships. They were unhappy with the government that was there at that moment. Now, you're from this very prominent Sri Lankan family that was in power at that moment. How defining do you think that year 2022 was? How does that change the politics of Sri Lanka? And how do you take things forward from there? Do you think things have improved? Because a lot of people said that they wanted growth. Sri Lanka in the last couple of years has grown at a rate of about 5%. Do you think enough has been done? What more could be done?
Well, see, 2022 crisis, it did not happen in isolation. It was a series of incidents that took place from 2015. And if you recall, we had East attacks in 2019-18. And then we went through the COVID. And 80 countries like Sri Lanka were suffering from the impact that happened from the COVID. And as you know, Sri Lanka is heavily depending on foreign remittance and tourism. So, and top of that, as you know, there are many claims and allegations by the US government itself, the President Trump itself, regarding regime change in our part of the world and how the USAID funded. So taking all these into consideration, I believe it's moving forward. It's about planning for a longer term, especially to make sure that our energy security is maintained and our food security is maintained. And I think after 2022, all political parties in Sri Lanka started redefining themselves, rethinking themselves, and realigning themselves into the modern context, because you see there is a rapid change in the voting pattern as well. So it's a question whether we are actually keeping up with the modern demands of the modern society, or are we following the traditional pathway of development and infrastructure?
My final question to you, Namal, is this. You are also a rugby player. Now, Sri Lanka, as we know, like India, is a cricket-crazy nation. How did you get involved in rugby? What actually made you, start playing rugby? This is unusual. There are very few politicians who play a sport professionally, and here you are, you play rugby, and this is the images that we've gotten behind what is on the screen. How did you get involved in rugby? And you also told me a little while ago that your family, there are a number of people who play rugby. Tell us more about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, see, my father's family is into politics, and we are a dynastical political family from that end. But from my mother's side, my great-grandfather was in the Royal Navy, and they all played rugby at that time for Ceylon. So from him to my mother's two brothers, their two children, and my two brothers. So altogether, we are about 7 in the family, from my great-grandfather, from my mother's side, who has represented Ceylon or Sri Lankan rugby, including myself. So for some reason, when I was 10 years old, I took my second brother to play rugby. Then when he saw everyone was too big, because he was 9 years and I was 10 years, and the rest of the people were all 15, 16 years. So one of us had to remain there. So then I decided, okay, let me go and start first and see how it goes. And well, it took me to the national level, and my two brothers also played for Sri Lanka, and I played for uni in UK as well. So it's something very close to my heart. And I think someone has to do something different, right? So I think we decided to choose rugby over cricket.
That's very interesting. Namal Rajapaksa, one of the most prominent politicians in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and coming to us and meeting with us here in WION. Thank you very much.
Thank you.